My life changed the day Madam poured hot water on my leg and said it was a mistake. But what hurt me most wasn't the pain. It was that nobody in the house said anything. Not even Oga. My name is Adiz, but everyone in the Olu household just called me you. I came from a small village in Enugu, where my parents barely managed to feed me and my siblings. When I was told I would be moving to Lagos to work as a housemaid for a rich family, I felt like God had remembered me at last. I was only 16. The house was massive. It had tall gates and shining floors that looked like glass. I had never seen such luxury in my life. At first, I was shy and eager to please. I cleaned, scrubbed, cooked, and kept to myself. Mr. Olu, my Oga, was a quiet man. He always left early and came back late. But his wife, Mrs. Olu, was another story. Madam hated me from the beginning. At first, I thought maybe it was just because I was new, but it became clear with time that she truly despised me. She never spoke to me with kindness. If I made a mistake, even a small one, she would slap me or starve me. There were days she would accuse me of stealing salt, sugar, even tissue paper. She would scream, throw things, and sometimes drag me by the ear in front of her children and their friends. I swallowed the pain because I had nowhere to go. My family needed the little money they were being sent from my salary. I couldn't disappoint them. I later found out that Madam herself had once been poor, even poorer than me. She had grown up in Mushin, hawking akara with her mother. But after she married Mr. Olu, she did everything to erase her past. She opened a boutique with her husband's help, wore expensive lace and jewelry, and changed the way she talked so people wouldn't guess where she came from. Maybe seeing me reminded her too much of who she used to be, a life she now hated with passion. In those days, I slept in a small room beside the store. No fan, no proper mattress, just a thin mat and my wrapper. Some nights I would cry silently until I slept. Other nights, I would stare into the darkness and ask God if he was still watching. There was nobody to confide in. I was just a housemaid, one of the invisible ones. But the worst was yet to come. One evening, Madam barged into the kitchen and shouted, "So you want to snatch my husband from me?" I was confused. She said she had noticed the way I looked at Oga, that I was intentionally bending down seductively when he passed, that I was now preparing his food with special love. I was too shocked to speak. Before I could even defend myself, she grabbed a wooden spoon and began to beat me. That night, I slept on the kitchen floor, bleeding and trembling. The next morning, she called me and said, "Since you like men, I'll give you one. A man that suits your class." And that was when she introduced me to Mr. Ken. He was the estate cleaner. Everyone knew him as the man who packed dustbins and greeted people politely. He was always in worn-out shoes and a faded uniform. I never looked at him twice before that day. Madam smiled sweetly and said, "You and Ken will make a perfect match. Both of you are at the bottom of life." I was speechless. She went on to say she had spoken to him already, and he was interested in me. That she would make sure we got married quickly, so I could leave her house and stop tempting her husband. I wanted to scream. But where would I go? My people had nothing. The only place I had in Lagos was this same house that was now pushing me out like trash. And so, I agreed to meet Mr. Ken. That was the day everything began to change, in a way none of us expected. The first time I sat with Mr. Ken properly, I was expecting to meet a rough, tired man who smelt like dustbin and engine oil. But instead, he was neat, soft-spoken, and surprisingly respectful. We sat at the back of the estate, near the small security shed. He brought me a bottle of malt and a plastic chair. When I asked him why he agreed to marry someone he didn't know, he smiled gently and said, "I've been watching you for a long time. You're different." I didn't know what to say. Nobody had ever said anything kind to me in years. Not in that house. And here was a man, poor yes, but warm, who looked me in the eyes and spoke to me like I mattered. I still didn't trust the situation. I believed it was another one of Madam's wicked plans to humiliate me further. But over time, I began to see that Mr. Ken wasn't part of her game. He would wait for me at the gate when I went to buy groceries. Sometimes he brought oranges or banana for me from the estate garden. Other times, he just sat and listened to me talk, really listened with interest and care. I had never felt that kind of attention before. He never tried to touch me without permission, never pressured me, never mocked me. In fact, he told me he respected me even more for surviving all I had gone through. One afternoon, we sat under a mango tree while the estate children were riding bicycles. He looked at me and said, "Adiz, I don't know how you still carry light in your eyes after everything." You're strong. I broke down and cried. It was like those words opened something in me I had locked away. The tears wouldn't stop. He held my hand quietly and said nothing. Just sat with me till I could breathe again. The days turned into weeks. And slowly, I began to feel something strange in my chest when I saw him. It wasn't love at first. It was safety, then comfort, then a quiet kind of joy. For the first time since I entered Madam's house, I was smiling genuinely. Of course, Madam was watching everything closely. She was excited. In fact, she became unusually nice to me. She gave me an old gown she didn't want anymore and started praising Mr. Ken in front of me. He's hardworking, she would say. He may be poor, but he's better than useless men who beat their wives. She thought she was finishing me. But what she didn't know was that in her attempt to bury me, she had planted me. Mr. Ken and I started talking about the future, small, shy dreams. Maybe open a small kiosk. Maybe rent a tiny room. We didn't have much, but we had each other. And to a girl like me, who had spent years being treated like a burden, that was everything. Then, one evening, after dinner, Mr. Olu called me into the living room. It was unusual because he hardly ever spoke to me directly anymore. He looked uncomfortable, like someone being forced to read a speech. He cleared his throat and said, "Adiz, I heard you and Ken are planning to get married." I nodded. He looked away for a moment, then said, "You should be grateful. At least someone wants to marry you." I swallowed hard. That night, I sat by my small window and stared out at the estate lights. I should have been happy. I was finally leaving that house. But something in me felt heavy, like a storm was coming, but I didn't know from where. The following weekend, Mr. Ken told me to meet him by the estate clubhouse. "Wear something nice," he said. I didn't understand why, but I wore the only fine dress I had, a simple yellow gown Madam's daughter had once outgrown and thrown at me. I reached there nervously, wondering what was going on. When I arrived, what I saw made my legs freeze. The entire clubhouse had been decorated with gold and white balloons. Candles were everywhere. There was music, laughter, and people, some of them from the estate, some I didn't recognize. Right in the center, standing in a sharp black suit, was Mr. Ken. But he wasn't just Mr. Ken anymore. He stepped forward and took the mic. "Good evening, everyone. My name is not actually Mr. Ken. My name is Teo Alade, and I'm not a cleaner." The room fell silent. I stood still, heart pounding, mind blank. He continued, "I came to this estate disguised as a worker because I wanted to find something money has never given me, genuine love. I met Adiz, and I found more than love. I found a rare heart, a true woman." He knelt down and brought out a ring that sparkled so hard, I thought my eyes were deceiving me. "Adiz, will you marry me?" I couldn't breathe. I turned slowly and saw Madam standing at the edge of the crowd, mouth wide open, frozen. Her eyes met mine, and in that moment, I saw something I had never seen in her before, fear. I turned back to Teo and nodded. The whole room erupted in cheers, but my body was still shaking. I had just stepped out of the shadows into a future I never imagined possible. But what came next, nobody, not even me, was prepared for. The days after the proposal moved in a blur. News spread like wildfire, both in and out of the estate. Cleaner proposes to maid in lavish surprise event. Turns out he's a billionaire. Blogs carried it. Neighbors whispered about it. Some congratulated me with wide smiles and shaky hands. Others just watched from a distance like they were waiting for me to fall. But Madam, she vanished. For 2 whole days after the proposal, she stayed locked in her room. She didn't scream, didn't curse, didn't throw things, which was more terrifying than all her usual madness. Mr. Olu too was unusually quiet. He began to speak to me with a new kind of politeness, like I had suddenly become someone worthy of full sentences. Me, Adiz, the same girl they used to send outside at night to fetch water like a goat. Then one morning, Madam called me. Her eyes were swollen, but her voice was steady. "So this was your plan, En," she said. "You trapped him with your village innocence. Played victim until he felt sorry for you." I said nothing. She moved closer, her perfume too strong for that early hour. "Tell me the truth. Did you know who he was all along?" I looked at her, finally meeting her eyes with strength I didn't know I had. "No, Ma. I only knew his heart." She laughed bitterly. "You'll regret this. That man will leave you. They always do." But I didn't regret anything. In the following weeks, wedding plans began in full force. Teo. Yes, I had to start calling him by his real name now. hired a wedding planner, and flew in a stylist from South Africa just to help me feel confident again. He introduced me to his siblings, all of them well-to-do and respectful. One of his sisters hugged me tightly and said, "We've been praying he would find someone who sees beyond his money." It should have been a sweet time, but my body had not forgotten the trauma. At night, I would wake up sweating, afraid someone was about to pour hot water on me again. Sometimes I still jumped when someone raised their voice near me. My hands shook when I was asked to make simple decisions. It was like Madame's voice still lived inside me. Teo noticed. He held me one night and said, "You've been strong all your life. But now, let me help you carry it." He paid for therapy. My sessions started weekly. At first, I didn't want to open up, but the therapist was patient. She taught me how to find my voice again, how to trust my own thoughts. For the first time in years, I started to believe I deserved kindness. But just when I was beginning to heal, another storm hit. A week before our wedding, Madame stormed into the estate office, dragging one of the guards with her. She was screaming that I had used charms on her husband, on her family, and now on a billionaire. That she had proof I was a witch. She held up an old black polythene bag, opened it, and brought out what looked like an old wrapper and a bottle of palm oil. "This was under her mattress," she shouted. "She used it to trap my husband first, now this rich man." People began to gather. The estate manager stepped out, frowning. "Madam, please calm down." But she wouldn't stop. "I warned you people about these poor girls. You bring them into your home, they destroy everything." Teo arrived midway through her madness. He didn't raise his voice. He just looked at her and said, "Madam Olu, I'm deeply disappointed." She turned sharply. "So you're defending her? This girl will ruin you." "No," he said calmly. "She's the one who saved me." The crowd murmured. Madame stood there, humiliated, panting like a wounded lioness. Then slowly, she turned around and walked away. That was the last time she ever spoke to me directly. The wedding happened a week later. It was like something from a movie. The venue was by the ocean. My dress was silk and simple, but elegant. My father cried as he walked me down the aisle. And when I looked up and saw Teo waiting for me, tears in his own eyes, I knew I was finally safe. But the truth is, the pain didn't disappear. Healing doesn't work like magic. On the outside, everything looked perfect. But inside, I was still learning how to believe that love could be soft. That I didn't have to earn safety through suffering. And sometimes I still asked myself, what if Madame had succeeded? What if I had married a truly poor man, lost in the slums somewhere, suffering in silence? That thought haunted me more than I cared to admit. Still, the bigger twist hadn't even happened yet. Because just 3 months after our wedding, a video leaked online. One that would change everything we thought we knew. The video came out of nowhere. Teo and I had just returned from a charity event we co-hosted for abused girls in Ajagunal. It was something we started doing after the wedding, using our platform to support women like me, women who had been silenced, women who needed to know they deserved better. That night, I was tired but happy. For once, I felt useful, purposeful. Not just someone who had survived, but someone who was now helping others survive. Then my phone buzzed. At first, I thought it was another congratulatory message. But when I opened it, I froze. The video was grainy, shot on someone's phone. It showed Madame, yes, Mrs. Olu herself, sitting at the back of a restaurant with a man I didn't recognize at first. But what caught everyone's attention was what she was saying. "She thinks she has won, ABI? That small girl. I made her who she is. If I hadn't introduced her to that so-called cleaner, she'd still be scrubbing my toilet. And now she's forming Madame, doing interviews." The man chuckled nervously. Madame leaned in, lowering her voice slightly. "Do you know the real joke?" I knew who he was. My heart dropped. She continued. "I knew he was rich. I didn't know he was that rich, but I knew he wasn't ordinary. I saw him once in Banana Island, driving a different car. I asked around. I just didn't say anything because I wanted to test the girl. Let's see how far her charm can carry her." She laughed, a cruel, bitter laugh that tightened my chest. I didn't know the whole world would start clapping for her like she built her own life. All she did was cry like a baby and catch a rich man. And now she's forming inspiration. I stood in the middle of our living room, phone shaking in my hand, heart beating louder than the ticking wall clock. Teo came over. "What's wrong?" I handed him the phone. He watched it without blinking. His jaw tightened. She knew," I whispered. "She knew who you were. All this time. She didn't just want to punish me. She wanted to humiliate me in front of someone powerful. Teo sat down slowly. She used your trauma as entertainment. I nodded, biting my lip hard to stop the tears. The video exploded across the internet that night. And unlike before, this time, people turned on her. Wicked woman. See manipulation. After all the girls suffered, you still want to take credit for her joy? She's jealous and bitter. Period. Madam didn't come outside for days. And when she finally did, it was to post a written apology on her business page. A long, cold message that read like it was drafted by a lawyer. I deeply regret my words. I did not mean to take away from Adi's journey. She is a resilient young woman and deserves all her blessings. I was emotional, and I spoke carelessly. I apologized to her and her family. No mention of the abuse. No mention of the hot water. No mention of the years she broke me down to my bones. Just a bland apology to save face. And still a part of me ached. Because even though I had escaped her house, married a good man, and built a new name for myself, there was still a wound that hadn't healed. The years of being treated like nothing. Like my feelings didn't matter. Like I was just another poor girl whose story didn't need to be heard. I sat with my therapist the next day and told her everything. All of it. From the wrapper Madam gave me to wear when I first met Teo, to the fear in her eyes the day I said yes to his proposal. She asked me one question. Do you want to forgive her? I didn't answer. Because truthfully, I didn't know. Was I supposed to forgive someone who enjoyed watching me suffer? Someone who thought poverty was something to mock and weaponize? But I also knew, holding on to that hate would only poison me in the end. That night, I sat alone in our garden, looking up at the stars. I remembered my mother's words from years ago, before I left the village. No matter what they take from you, Adiz, don't let them take your softness. And for the first time since everything happened, I cried without shame. Loud, heavy tears that cleansed me from the inside. The next morning, I woke up and called Teo. I want to speak at the Women's Summit next week, I said. Are you sure? He asked, surprised. I nodded. Yes. It's time I told the full story. My story. On my own terms. Because I wasn't just the girl who got lucky and married a billionaire. I was the girl who was stepped on, beaten, silenced, and still rose. But before I could rise fully, there was one more thing I had to do. I wore a white dress that day. Not because I wanted to look rich or flawless, but because I wanted to look whole. The Women's Summit Hall was filled with people. Politicians, activists, celebrities, ordinary women, survivors like me. I sat backstage, hands clasped together, breathing in and out as the announcer called my name. Adiz Teo Alade, founder of Voice Unheard, survivor of domestic labor abuse, and now advocate for girls across Nigeria. The applause shook the room. I walked to the stage slowly, each step reminding me of where I had come from. The tiny room beside Madam's store, the kitchen floors I slept on, the bruises, the fear, the silence. I stood at the podium, eyes scanning the crowd. Some of them knew me as the maid who married a billionaire. Some had come out of curiosity. But I wasn't here for fame. I was here for truth. I was 16 when I was brought to Lagos to serve in a house that was bigger than my whole village street. I was told I'd be treated like family. What I got was beatings, starvation, and shame. The room went still. I scrubbed toilets while Madam's children walked past me like I didn't exist. I was blamed for things I didn't do. Hot water was poured on me, and I was told it was my fault. I was accused of seducing a man I couldn't even look in the eye out of fear. I paused. Someone sniffled in the crowd. But let me tell you the truth many don't like to hear. Sometimes, the people who have suffered the most become the worst oppressors. My madam was once poor. But instead of lifting me, she tried to bury me. She hated what she used to be, and punished me for reminding her of it. More silence. But here's what I've learned. No matter how deep they bury you, you are not soil. You are seed. And when it rains, you will rise. The audience erupted in applause. Some stood. Some wiped tears. I didn't marry into wealth because I was lucky. I married into it because I chose kindness, even when I had every reason to become bitter. I chose love. I chose truth. And even now, after everything, I choose healing. After the speech, women lined up to hug me, thank me, tell me their own stories. One woman whispered, "You've given me strength to leave the house where they're treating my daughter like a dog." That night, I sat with Teo on the balcony of our home. The same man Madam tried to chain me to as punishment, not knowing she was chaining me to peace. He held my hand and said, "You did something powerful today." I smiled faintly. "I feel lighter." A few weeks later, I asked to meet Madam. I wanted it to be on my terms. Not revenge. Just closure. We met at a quiet restaurant on the island. She wore sunglasses and barely touched her drink. I took a deep breath. I'm not here to fight. I'm not even here to shame you. I just need to say this out loud. She looked at me without speaking. I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. Her lips parted, like she wanted to defend herself. But no words came. I pray you heal too, I added softly. Because whatever made you hate people that remind you of your past is still eating you alive. I stood up and left. That was the day I finally became free. It's been 3 years now. I've traveled to over 9 states, speaking to girls in shelters, schools, orphanages. Teo and I adopted 2 beautiful children from a home in Ogun. My foundation now runs skill programs for domestic workers who want to start new lives. We give them dignity. Sometimes people still ask me, would you ever forgive your madam fully? And I tell them the truth. Forgiveness is not always a feeling. Sometimes it's a decision you wake up and make again every morning. For your own healing. For your own future. For the sake of the girl you used to be. So, what did you learn from my story? Would you forgive my madam? Comment below. I want to hear from you.